Bloggy Friends Show.
What's up, my Bloggy friends? Famous Ashley Grant here, and I just want to welcome you to the Bloggy Friends Show. We're so excited to have you join us on this journey of sharing our knowledge and experiences with you. Whether you're a blogger, a content creator, or just someone who's interested in learning more about the digital world, we've got something for you. So grab your notebook and a pen to take some notes, or just sit back and take in all the amazing information and ideas we're about to share with you. Let's get into it.
I'm excited to have you here, so let's just kind of dive right in. We're talking about how bloggers cannot just be bloggers anymore, and so the Reader's Digest version is they got to be on podcasts so that they can promote their blogs. You are the genius that comes up with all the media stuff, so tell me all you have to share.
Oh, gosh, well, where do we begin? Let's open up the encyclopedia. Oh, man, when you do something for so long, you develop a lot of knowledge, and some of it useless knowledge, some of it fun facts and stuff. But Ashley, thank you, first of all, for having me. By way of quick introduction, well, hello, friend who's listening to our conversation right now. I'm Josh Elledge, and so I've been in the media about 3,000 times. I've done probably close to 3,000 podcasts on top of that as a host. I've been a guest on maybe close to 500 shows. We have launched over 300 podcasts through my company, upmyinfluence.com. And so if you want to go spy on me, it's the website is upmyinfluence.com, or you could just Google my name too, and you'll see all the stuff I've been doing over the years. And, as a consultant, both as a media consultant and over the past 6 years in particular, my primary work is that of a fractional chief revenue officer. So I work with higher level coaches, consultants, B2B service providers, agency owners primarily. And all I simply do is I drive sales and revenue. And we do that through a very relationship-oriented approach. So if, my friend who's listening right now, if you do what's called account-based sales, meaning you're going to have conversations before somebody buys something, right? It's not an automated sales and marketing process, right? But, so coaches and consultants, I mean, for sure, like you're going to have probably a series of conversations before somebody agrees to sign a contract and give you, $30, $40, $80,000, for your coaching package. And we have clients that, at a minimum, I say minimum, it has to be 5 figures, but it goes all the way up to multi-7 figures. So generally we're working with people that have some pretty decent domain expertise. And collectively, we have generated that we can track a minimum. We have no idea what the upside is, but it's at least about $40 million in sales that we've helped create. So Ashley, before we talk about Pod Verified and all that, how I do that is that with the podcast that we create, if you're familiar with, and by the way, Ashley, have you read, or if you're familiar with The Go-Giver by Bob Burg?
Yes, you actually introduced me to that last time we chatted.
Oh, yeah. So listen, if you get nothing else from this conversation, to my friend that's listening to our conversation right now, go read The Go-Giver. This is one of the follow-up books I'm holding for video, but it's Go-Givers Sell More. But Bob Burg teaches what I think for those of us who are in account-based sales, probably the best strategy that we can do. And that is that if you take all of that nonsense sales and marketing advice that are sold by the hustle bros and the bro-y energy that's out there, and you got to try to do all this fake scarcity and all this other nonsense. Listen, you're not fooling anybody. I should say you could probably fool newer people. Like if you sell to newer entrepreneurs, that stuff might work on them. But if you sell to sophisticated leaders who have been in business for any length of time, that stuff is not going to work on them. They've seen it all. They've been around. And so the best thing that you can do, and this is what Bob Burg would advocate, is that you lead with noble intent. And what I mean by that is you need to change your energy. If you're showing up to a conversation with someone and you're all about what you want and what you can get, I don't care how great of a poker face you think you have. We know We can tell. And some of us tend to be pretty highly empathic. Some of us are pretty savvy, right? We know, we can tell. Like you cannot fake it, right? So this goes for content creators. Okay. Your content creators know what you want as well, based upon your tone, your language, kind of your urgency, like what you do. Like you're not fooling anybody. Now, again, I can go back into my background as a journalist, and I learned from Adrian Cronauer, who was featured. His story was portrayed by Robin Williams in the movie Good Morning Vietnam. We talk about that another time. But his whole thing is, again, you got to be honest with people, and you have to be honest with audiences at all time. Okay, so back to the go-giver. Okay, noble intent means that you're always there to do good for somebody else. You're there to just be a friend. You're not there to desperately try to get your own sales. That's new behavior. That's newbie behavior. Okay, and again, you go to any mixer, and generally the leaders can tell who the newbies are based upon kind of how they come across and their desperation, that sort of thing. Okay, so noble intent, you're there to do good things for good people. So the second part of that is you're always leading in generosity. So if there is something that you are hoping for, like you're in business, right? You have something that you need to do in order for you to keep doing what you're doing. Like you got to make the wheels of economics continue to turn. So you would lead in generosity, because generally leaders and A-listers and decision makers and people that manage big budgets, generally they have no mandate to jump on discovery calls, sales calls, coffee chats, sitting through webinars, white papers. That's not their job. That's your job to try and shove that stuff in front of people's faces. Hey, that's not their job. If it's not their job to do it, you're kind of banking on their, curiosity, or I don't know, you're going to try and talk them into something. But unless that's in their job description where they have to evaluate stuff like that on a regular basis, or they get fired, then it's really hard to do that. And it is such an uphill battle. So what Bob Burg would tell you to do is, why don't you figure out what they actually really do want truly? And again, it can't be something that everybody else is giving away as part of some sales funnel or whatever, right? And give that away. Give generously. And most importantly, Ashley, is you need to divorce the outcome that you hope, right? In sales, we call this a two-step approach, right? So initially, you have to be okay with a 100% give with absolutely no return from the other person. If you can't get there, sales is going to be very hard for you. It's always going to feel like an uphill challenge. And sometimes you're probably going to feel a little slimy, and it's going to feel a little bit out of your value system. And it's not your fault. The only reason you're doing it that way is because someone told you that that's what you're supposed to do. That is a lie. I have got good data. I work with only high-level leaders. And what we know is that if you can just show up and just serve other people and give to other people, serve your industry and do nice things for other people, and be okay with that being the completion of the relationship, that's where you want to get it. Now, if you can get there, yeah, Ashley, I'm sure you can imagine, what do you imagine the outcomes are going to end up being?
You'll have more authentic relationships and actually make sales.
You just said it right there. That is what happens. It is such an important distinction, and it doesn't seem like it would be that huge. It is, right? And again, I've got the data to prove this, in having done this for, again, as long as I've done it. So you have to be able to give away generously. And then it's imagine this, right? So let's say, and again, I can get nitty gritty on this. And again, we'll get to Pod Verified, because right now I'm going to talk about how we implement and grow sales, and by hosting podcasts. And again, what I want to say this before we continue, and if there's any headline for this conversation, I want it to be this, or something akin to this, right? Whatever the SEO gods tell you to. And that is, there is no better ecosystem on the planet for sales and business development and networking with high-level leaders than podcasting. Nothing comes close. Show it to me, and I will absolutely eat my hat, or whatever the expression is, right? And the reason is this: podcast guesting and hosting is generally the domain of leaders who are willing to give generously, which generally attracts a pretty high caliber type of person. They're not afraid. They're not desperately, just trying to funnel someone into their sales thing or whatever, right? So they've got some courage, and generally they have a little bit of experience. They've given for some time. They know that giving is the path to, getting everything that you want. Again, this goes back to, ages and ages, these principles. So yeah, so that's what that's, again, it's podcasting, either hosting or guesting. And I'm talking about hosting right now. We'll talk about guesting in just a second. So we can make sure to give a lot of value and make sure we give lots of great tips so that you can profit from your work rather than just, be out there hoping to serve, but we got to help you make some money. Okay, so think about this. Leaders get opportunities to speak. And I have to tell you that in all my speaking opportunities that I've had, I've spoken for the Tony Robbins organization. I've spoken for Social Media Marketing World several years, podcasting conferences, marketing conferences, keynotes, all that stuff, right? And so I'll tell you that I don't necessarily do a lot of business from the crowd, right? That's not real. I am there to just give, right? But here's where I end up doing all my business. In the green rooms afterwards, in the VIP mixers, just quiet conversations afterwards where people kind of pull me aside and like, I really appreciate it. And, and then that's where we just kind of figure out if there's business for us to do. Here's a great illustration of this for, to my friends that's ever been on a panel at a conference. Let's say that you show up to a panel and you get to meet your other panelists or whatever, and the behind the scenes stuff before and afterwards, right? So you're there in service, serving an audience with other leaders because you're on a panel, right? And so now in that process, you get to experience what the other leaders on the panel are saying. So let's say that there's someone on the panel and you're like, oh, that's actually, Ashley's exactly the kind of person that I generally love working with. And it sounds like, she's kind of at that caliber. I don't know. Maybe she would be a good partner, or maybe she could be a client. I don't know, right? We don't presuppose anything, but let's say that, Ashley, you and I are on this panel. We're serving an audience. I hear you, you hear me. So we're getting to feel one another. And you're like, okay, Josh knows his stuff. And then afterwards, I say, Ashley, I loved what you had to share. It sounds like we have some things in common. Hey, let's grab 30 minutes sometime on Zoom next week. I'd love to see if there's something we should be doing together. 100% of the time, Ashley, I got to tell you, people say yes. It would be so weird to say no to an invitation like that. So my question is, if that works so consistently, why are we doing all this other stuff? Why are we hitting people over the head in the DMs and email and TikTok dances, to try to drum up business? That's hard. Right? And everybody does that. Instead, what I find is that most successful leaders do most of their business in what I like to call the whisper network. Right? And that's just the quiet conversations. It's not showy. It's not flashy. It's just two leaders figuring out if there's some opportunity to do business together in some way or collaborate in some way. And I'm telling you what, it is so much fun to do business that way. I'm biased, but there's no way. You could not get me to go into some environment where I'm supposed to do this scarcity, urgency nonsense. Like, ick. It's not for me anyway. Anyway, that's kind of up my influence historically in a nutshell. And again, I teach all of this stuff. I give it all away for free. And if it gives you great ideas and I can free you from, maybe sales and marketing that doesn't feel values aligned, man, I hope that I've inspired you to get free of that. But of course, yeah, you're certainly welcome to connect with me there. Ashley, I don't even remember that question you asked me. I think you pulled the Josh string and Josh just started talking and now the string fully back to my back now.
It's always fun whenever I pull the Josh string because you never know what you're going to say. And it's always valuable. But basically, I just wanted to talk to you about why bloggers who are trying to get people on their websites should be podcast guesting.
Yes.
Because, I started the podcast for myself because I wanted to talk to people and I wanted to learn more about blogging. But now I'm seeing that guest posting is dead. Guest podcasting is where it's at.
Yeah. I'll share an observation. This is really interesting. I'll be very frank. I've not ever been like, I shouldn't say this. I in the past 10 years, blogging has been kind of a secondary thing for us. And we've not really gotten a lot of good SEO stuff, I would say, if I'm being frank. But I'll tell you this, I get now, and I'll explain what my SEO person actually told me. We get a lot of inbound, I think they call it GEO, right? It was basically just referrals from ChatGPT and other AI tools. We've actually gotten a lot of inbound calls and traffic from ChatGPT and other AI tools. And so AI tends to value all of this other content that may have not been as easy historically for Google to rank you with. So they see that you've got all of these impressions everywhere. So if you want to kind of go where the future is, just be out there creating. Now, another thing I'll say for bloggers is that for me, if you know your stuff and you have a lot of knowledge up here, now I tend to be a verbal processor, if you haven't guessed. I tend to, I have a lot of junk up here, so it's pretty easy for me to just blah, 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 blah. Okay, now with today's amazing tools, right? Today's amazing writing assistants and, of course, AI-enabled tools. Now, I can take all of these words that I've created, and now I can dump this into my AI tools of choice and say, okay, here's a transcript of all this stuff that I blah, blah, blah about. Help me create some blog ideas based upon, and then I give it all the other criteria, what people are searching for, la, 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 la. Okay, so now I've started it off with a lot of raw content. So now I can go into my AI tools and, I can create a lot. So Ashley, I'm not necessarily a blogger, but you and I are connected on social media and Facebook, and we engage quite a bit there. So that's really what I do for sometimes I write way too long for Facebook, but some of my longer posts or whatever, here's all I do. Is I open up my tool and I just start talking, right? And I do a brain dump in there and I say, help me synthesize this into maybe more of a well thought out structure for a post, right? And then I get all of that. I don't want it writing in my voice. And I'm really adamant about do not let AI try to replicate your voice. I think that's just so fake. And I'm just like, give me basic language. That's not your job. It's my job to write in my voice. That said, I love using tools like AI to help construct thought and also fact check and check my own biases and all that other stuff, which I've got a prompt that I go through all of that stuff. And then I'm like, okay, this is a really great outline. Okay. And then I take it in and I'm the one who writes it in my voice, because that to me is part of that sacred relationship I always have with an audience, that they're not hearing just some fake AI nonsense. I need to make sure that if I'm saying this is me, it better be me.
Understood.
There's another reason why a few reasons why bloggers should be podcasting. Because again, think of like how many words Josh has used, in the past 20 minutes. There's a lot of words. There's a lot of content to work with potentially. So I'm going to give this to my team and I'm like, hey, dump this through and come up with some blog ideas now and repurpose it for social media. Obviously, we can create vertical videos, we can create reels, all that other kind of stuff. You could repurpose it so many ways, with this pillar content now that we've created.
That's true. And what's really cool to me is that if I guest on someone else's podcast, that's still more content I can play with. And in a lot of cases, you get a backlink.
Oh, for sure. And it's great. What I like to say, so as a media consultant, I would say that is third-party validation, right? So you get to say things because you got to ask the question. So you now get to give all of your stuff in a way that maybe you wouldn't normally do with your own audience, right? You might be a little bit more bold, in the way that you're communicating. And again, you're being seen and being requested because of your expertise, to be seen all over the internet, not just talking, kind of one-to-one with your own people, but they get to see you making the rounds everywhere. That is validation. And third-party validation beats conversation all the time.
That's absolutely true. And so now that we've established that bloggers definitely do need to be on people's podcasts, how the heck do they make it happen?
Okay, well, so let me give you a glimpse behind that whole world. So I started podcasting in 2007 when I was taking my radio segments for my other company, Savings Angel, and I record them off the radio, convert it into MP3, upload it to my own server, hand code my own RSS feed, and somehow I didn't even submit it, but somehow Apple or iTunes found it and started putting my show on. And the cover it was so janky back then. It was just but hey, so I've been doing this for a long time, right? And I feel like I've got some pretty good objective data around the guesting world, right? Because what I said is there's no better ecosystem on the planet for networking, business, and sales development because of who you can meet and the relationships that you can build and the opportunities that can be had. So your question is, how do I guest on more podcasts? So I'll share this is that right now where you are going to have a perceived value as a guest, right? And that's based on a lot of criteria. Now, if you want to do a simple free test, got a great website that you can go to. It's free, and it will give you a score on how valuable you are in the eyes of podcast hosts. You need to know this score because what unfortunately a lot of people do is they say, well, I'm an expert in this. I wrote a book on this. I'm an expert speaker, whatever, right? Author, speaker, coach on whatever, right? And so what they do is they start sending spam to Mel Robbins or Joe Rogan or whatever, right? Good luck with that. I can tell you that your chances of getting booked on those shows is 0.000000001. Yes, there is a chance, but it's such a bad use of your time. And most importantly, it's a bad use of your hope. What you should be doing is get clarity on what caliber of stages you belong, and you should be playing at that caliber. Now, I share the inverse of the example of kind of pitching way too high is that what I see most guests doing is they're spending way too much time on shows that are way early stage for them because it's easy to get on brand new podcasts. So we kind of feel good that we got accepted to some show. Now, it might be a little amateur hour, right? Your experience of that. But even worse is you're not going to make any money doing it. It's good for getting your reps in. And there are some fine ecosystems out there that will help you get connected with newer podcasts. But if you want to be on stages that are appropriate for your level of professional success, get clarity. And then what you want to do is try to identify who your peers are. Again, at Pod Verified, it's free. Now, the matching, that part is, that's the paid part of it. If, we'll give you some ideas of where you belong. We'll show you some examples of kind of where you could expect to be. And then, the paid part is, of course, we'll match that for you and only charge you, when we land you a great spot. But we got to get that clarity so that we can make sure that you're actually on stages that are going to move the dial. Okay. Now, but let me tell you what the process is. And I'm just going to reveal this is exactly what we do, right? Or you could do it yourself, right? So once you know that it's an appropriate size stage for your caliber, that's number one. Number two is you have to understand that this podcast host, they don't work for you. Okay. It's not most podcasters, especially if they've been podcasting for any length of time, usually they're not hurting for guests, which means if your approach is to just pitch them with some email pitch or whatever, that's usually going to come across as a little crass. It's the way, unfortunately, that I'll say that probably about 90% of the guesting agencies operate. They buy themselves a big email list of podcaster email addresses, and then they just send out spam, which is why, unfortunately, a lot of people who have invested money to guest on podcasts haven't really gotten much return on investment. It feels good. It feels productive. It feels validating to have somebody accept you. But at the end of the day, I think, if we're making investments of our time and money, we're running businesses here. We have to see, opportunities. So I've been on I've been on some really small amateur stages. Then I've also been on some pretty big shows. Social Media Examiner was a huge opportunity for me. Back in the day, Entrepreneurs on Fire, Don Lee Dumas, I got a lot of business from that. The bigger show, Mixergy was another one that I ended up getting some really great business out of it. And it's a night and day difference, depending, that caliber of stage. So, if you show up to an event and you're the keynote speaker, people just treat you way different than if you show up on, some little podunk mixer, which is nothing wrong with podunk mixers, but you just have to, it's not a keynote opportunity in front of thousands of people. You know what I'm saying? So again, you have to decide where you want to spend your time. And if your goal is to stay in business, get consistent revenue, grow your business, make your life a lot easier, not have to stress about the ups and downs financially, you just got to keep on getting out there, and the bigger stages are just going to pay you so much better. Okay, let's get back to how you reach out, because I'm going to say this. I got to tell you this. Okay. So here's what you do. So don't spray and pray. Do not do that. You are going to get blacklisted. You're going to get marked as spam. You are going to sustain reputational damage. And I don't think any of us listening or participating in this conversation right now want to be known as a spammer. I just don't believe that. Right. So, because this is our legacy that we're talking about. What do you want to be known for? How do you want to be seen in your industry? Okay. So here's what you do. It's called the 3-week warm-up. Okay. And this is all part of like what we do over at PodVerify. And I teach you this stuff for free, by the way. So you don't have to pay for any of this stuff. And all the education at PodVerified is always free. And I'm going to teach you how to make money. I'll teach you all that other stuff, right? So I'll teach you about, calls to action, how to do all that. And again, it's free. I don't charge for anything education-wise. I am a very much open source from my philosophy when it comes to knowledge and education. But here's the process. So let's say that there's a show that you want to be on and you qualify. You know that you qualify because the caliber of guests match your caliber. You know that, right? So here's what you do. 3 weeks, 3-week warm-up. Week 1, you are just, okay, again, the idea here is you're not going to spray and pray. You're going to spend more time with fewer people. But if you do this well, you should have a conversion rate somewhere between 30 and 60%. And again, I'm sorry to give you such a wide range, but there are a lot of other factors that we don't have time to get into. But generally, probably about a third or better of these people are going to say yes if you do it this way. Now, think about what we've been talking about: money, impact, growth. Why did you get into business in the first place? It's to make an impact in the world, probably, right? And get paid to do so and keep doing it and not be stressed out month to month. Okay, so this is how you do this. Spend more time with fewer people. These are leaders. These are A-listers. These are pros. Okay, so you need to treat them as such. They don't work for you. It's not their job to promote your business. They have their own goals. Podcasters are always looking for the highest caliber guests that they can, and they're trying to grow their audience. Most of them, that's their primary mission, right? So can you help them accomplish that goal? So think about it from their side of the table of generally what they want. And they may have lots of other business goals. And again, that's going to vary depending on, who it is and what their business plan is. But generally, almost all content creators want to grow their audience. So that going into it. So here's what you do. Number 1 is you're going to have to get familiar. Don't start with 100 shows. I want you to pick 2 shows. That's it. Just start 2 shows each week. And what I want you to do is I just want you to sample their content. That's it. Sample. You don't even have to listen to the entire shows or episodes or whatever, but I want you to spend some time trying to get to know them. Now, you're looking for some things, okay? I also want you to follow them on their social media. Look at their repurposed content. What you're trying to look for are values, biases, what are they most passionate about, and really take note of that stuff. What do they like to talk about? What is their mission? Like, why are they doing this? If you can learn that, oh mama, like that is some valuable intel, and it's not that hard. All right, so just do a little bit of homework. Listen, all of this said, you're in maybe 30, 45 minutes in a week's time. Honestly, that it doesn't take, and the ROI from your time is worth many, many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars potentially, depending on what your business model is. Okay, so first week is research and start to learn about them. Week 2, now you're going to start to engage with the podcast host on social media, right? You are going to engage with them as a fan, as a peer, right? So you're not going to be total like, oh my gosh, you're so big and I'm so tiny. Like, it's not that energy. It's just like, hey, listen, I'm an executive, or I'm a leader, I'm a founder, and I'm doing this or whatever. I really appreciated the insights that you share. That was really valuable. Thank you so much. It's just stuff like that. And so if you spend a week, and do not be fake, do not delegate this to a VA or AI, or you will be so hated. Not hated, but it's just like, oh, get out of here with the fake stuff, right? Don't be fake. So there are things that you can outsource and delegate, and you should, right? And then there are things that you should not delegate or outsource. And so systems, organization, project management, task management, stuff like that, like the minutia, that should all be delegated. Don't do that work, right? You can delegate that very easily, right? What you never delegate is relationship. If you delegate relationship, I'll tell you what, I would feel so ripped off. If I felt like that you were reaching out to me, but you're being fake about it and you're delegate, like, I'm really not worth that amount to you, that you're not even willing to just say hi and thank you to me. Instead, you got to have your AI bot do it. That's not a good look. And guess what? We can all tell. You're not fooling anybody, right? So don't do that. So just, again, we're talking maybe 30, 45 minutes because we're only talking about 2 shows. We're only talking about 2 people. You can build a relationship or start to begin a relationship with 2 people by investing 30, 45 minutes in a week. And again, remember the ROI, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per hour. This is the work. This is what you get paid for. Listen, in my work as a fractional chief revenue officer, I'll tell you this. You have an obligation, and your obligation, if you're the founder and you're involved, it's your responsibility to grow the company. Okay, you have one job, and you have a moral obligation to grow your company, right? And the most important thing that I would argue that you should be doing from an E-Myth perspective is not all the minutia, not cleaning your desk, not all the stuff that you can delegate. It should be high-level relationships with high-level leaders. That's your number one job. You do that, and the rest of everything will kind of take care of itself. I promise you that. Okay, so week 2, you're building a relationship, just engaging professionally and supporting their work. It's amazing. And Ashley, listen, I've done over 2,400 episodes for my show, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. If I were to say that the fan feedback is modest, I think that I would be using hyperbole. It is meager. And that is just the reality, because you know what? Everybody's busy. A lot of people are creating content. And so if somebody engages with me legitimately, genuinely on social media, I'm going to remember them. I really will. I will appreciate it. I know, you can also leave reviews and all that other stuff. And sure, that's cool. You could definitely throw that into the mix. But honestly, I just think that genuine conversation is it's just the best tool for relationship building. Just, again, go giver. Take what you want, set it aside, okay, for now, right? Again, we're just going to focus on the relationship first and give. Okay. So finally, week 3. Okay. Now, you only engage in week 3 activity after you have received some acknowledgement back from the host that they see you and they appreciate you. So again, be genuine. Don't rat-a-tat-tat them. But just, meet them on LinkedIn, engage with their content, find out where they're posting, right? Just comment, leave, if you can comment within, apps or whatever. Just wherever you can see their content showing up and there's an opportunity to engage, just engage and don't go over the top, but just be genuine, right? Good point. I love it. Share their stuff with your audience. Now you're really talking, because now that's where the rubber hits the road, and hosts really love that stuff. Okay. Finally, week 3. hey, Josh. And again, what I would do is I would start off by doing this publicly. And I would respond to a comment, some of their podcast content, and you say, I've actually been following you for a little while now. I really love what you're doing. It feels like we have some values aligned here. Again, I always love pointing out when we share values or there's like, I appreciate that you support this, right? Fine, because everyone's got their biases. Everyone's got their thing, right? And go ahead and lean into that. Right. So I'm a military veteran owned business. So you know what? I support, I support some of those causes associated with that. So it's going to be pretty easy to figure out what I believe in if you follow my stuff. And if, by the way, if you're not aligned, that's okay. Maybe it's not a fit for you. And don't ever lie. Like, it's like if you share very distinct differences in political views, it's okay if you don't engage with that person because there are people that will. Okay, so third week, I would start off by commenting, don't hit their DMs, don't hit their emails. But I would say something to the effect of, hey, Josh, I've been listening a little while. I really appreciate the stuff, and I'll recognize you because I saw you earlier. And if you just said, listen, what is your guest process? So obviously you interview guests. I think I'm at the caliber that you normally enter. I kind of took a look at, who you interview and, I think I might be aligned there. But do you have an assistant or do you have an application that I could, potentially throw my hat in the ring? And by the way, you absolutely can say no, right? If you send me that message, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, that is so super cool of you. Yes, if I can, right? If I can accept you, then I'll tell you what that process is. And I might, that the host might say, sure, why don't you DM me? That's great. Right? If they don't want to talk about that publicly or whatever. But that's all you're looking for is don't try to force them into how you want to get booked on their show. Ask them how they like to engage with guests because they all have a process. Now, some of the newer shows may not have that process buttoned down entirely. Like it might be still a little scattershot for them. But most of the established shows, like they've got a process or they've got a person, right? And so then in the DMs, they'll just give you the, they'll share it to you. Now, if they don't respond immediately and, maybe you add like a little emoji or whatever to your, you just add like your own comment or something like that, or, so it gives them another ping. So they see, because they might just miss it. Right. And if they miss it, that doesn't mean a no. So I don't want you to think just because you asked and they didn't respond, they may have been too busy, they didn't see it or whatever. Right. So that's what you do. Now, if they don't see it, then I'd say, but you've already been engaging with them, then I would say it might be appropriate to send them a DM in LinkedIn or whatever, a connection request. Or again, if their email is visible on their website, or if there's any other like a contact form or something like that, go to their website, do a little digging. Right? Just spend a little bit of time here and reach out to them in the way that they are offering, inviting people to reach out with them. Yeah. So if you just do that, and then again, I would just send that same note. Hey, Ashley, listen, I really appreciate the content. You have really great guests. I think I might be of the caliber that you normally interview. What is your process for, accepting guest applications? I'd be honored to throw my hat in the ring, and you can always say no. Right. And so it lets them off the hook there. And listen, you just simply do that. And again, I think you should do about a 30% or better acceptance rate. And now we're talking, because if you can do 2 of these a week, and let's say, out of every 4, or every 5, you get, I'm messing up my math now, but out of every 10, over the course of, over 5 weeks, you land 3 decent sized podcasts. Let me tell you, that can really move the needle, because you're not looking for everybody. You're looking for the right people, right, to engage with typically. So there you go, Ashley. That is, by the way, what I've just shared with you is based upon conversations with hundreds of podcasters. When I've talked to them about this topic, they all agree that is a very, very safe, that is what they want. That's what they're hoping for. And that is what the podcast guesting industry refuses to do, because they're too damn lazy. And they need to get their act together, or they're going to get their clock clean, and they're going to start losing business, because they realize that spamming is not the future of the way podcasting works. Podcasting is based upon relationships. It's the way public relations traditionally has always been. There's just way too many burly marketers that are trying to cheapen the system. And I'll tell you, don't spend money to spammers. Instead, just take the time, build a relationship yourself, and you'll have far better results. And by the way, I love all of my podcast guesting agencies. I know you're doing the best you can. You'll keep getting better.
Well, I know you like the podcast guesting agencies, but you also are just trying to put the people that are cheapening it on blast.
I want to celebrate the good ones who has the time. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I understand. It makes complete sense to me. And if someone's getting offended by what you're saying, they're probably doing it wrong.
Well, and you'll know that based on how many clients you keep losing. What their results are, because clients need to get ROI. And if you're not delivering ROI, you're going to keep going through this churn, and it's going to be so frustrating for you. And you're going to think it's everybody's problem. No, it's not everybody's problem. We have clients that are public relations professionals that have clients for years.
Yeah.
It's just they are not afraid to do the hard work that, it's human centric. It's, that's how I got my 3,000 media appearances. I never once sent a press release. It was reaching out just like I've described. And, 800 and some TV appearances, writing my syndicated column. I got all of that stuff because I reached out human to human, offered to be helpful, even agreed to do stuff that really didn't benefit me much. But as a result, now I started a collaborative relationship with that producer, journalist, or booking agent or whatever, really make them look good at their job. And then that led to a lot of other invitations and introductions.
Well, it definitely sounds like that's the best way to begin. But once people are ready to go to the next level, I know we're wrapping up on time here, but when they're ready to go to the next level, how does Pod Verified work so that they can kind of get in there and get stuff done?
Yeah. So listen, it's basically, like I said, it's basically Credit Karma for podcast guesting. So now you've got clarity over where you are. And then part two is, kind of the match component of that, right? So then what we do is, and currently our pricing, it's, we're in beta. So right now our pricing is you only pay when we land you a position. Now we ask for credits up front. And so it's $297 or $397 if you want us to do a bunch of other stuff for you, whatever. But, $297. You have to buy 4 of them, 4 credits. And that will give my team the bandwidth so that we can start introducing you to folks both within our network and then other people, again, that are, again, most importantly, they're Pod Verified aligned. Like they're the right size stages for you. And again, these should be the stages that are going to be the most profitable for you. They're the highest quality stages that you can qualify for. And those are going to be the ones that we're going to follow the same exact process. And it's going to be friend to friend to friend. And that's how we're going to do it. No spam. But yeah, so you could just go get your free score at podverified.com. And then once you're in there, I'm going to teach you a bunch of other stuff for free, like how to make money, how to give great closing, calls to action, that sort of thing. And that's all free. And I would be honored to help improve the world of podcast guesting, because as I mentioned, Ashley, there's no better ecosystem on the planet for business sales development and networking. And by the way, if I could put one more plug into my podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, I'm always looking for guests. If you are B2B, you're pretty good at what you do. You've been around for a little while, especially if you're a coach, consultant, agency owner, or B2B, service provider. You just simply go to my website. It's www.upmyinfluence.com. And when you go there, just click on podcast and you'll see guest application. You don't have to DM me. I just gave you exactly, that's how you do it. So you're welcome to, but you don't have to do that. So we make it real easy for you. And then on the guest application page, you'll see we've got a whole system. We've done this over 2,400 times. We really love rolling out the red carpet for our guests. And we've got over 100,000 in social. So it's a really good audience. It's an audience of what I like to call business adults, generally folks that have been in business for 5 or more years. They're founders and generally pretty sophisticated people. They're really great audience to do business with.
Well, that's fantastic. And I have to say, I have been sheepish and not wanted to apply myself to be on The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, but I think I'm finally at
It's a mistake. Ashley, you've already been given the invitation. You could go take care of that. Go just do what I just said. And, again, the team will take care of you. If you're afraid of rejection, please don't. It has nothing to do with your value, like anyone in particular's value. I'm not talking to you, Ashley, but anyone. So, please don't be afraid of rejection. If they say no, it's genuinely it's usually just a logistical thing. It has really not a whole lot to do with your value or your worth. So don't worry about, being hurt or offended. But thank you for having me. Our time is over.
Yes, it is. It's over. It went fast, but you gave a lot of amazing knowledge bombs, and I can't wait to share all of this stuff with our listeners. And I'll leave all of the links in the show notes. And Josh, thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Ashley Grant, you are amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, I'll talk to you real soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, my bloggy friends, I hope you enjoyed all the insights our guests had to share with you. To get the show notes for this and all episodes, go over to famousashleygrant.com/podcast. And until next time, may your page views be high and your bounce rate be low.